The church has been under attack of recent. Many incidents of pastors being attacked at church whilst they are still preaching, or whether people coming to mug and rob the church and the congregation whilst church is still happening. This has been happening on a frequent basis now, whether it's happening here in South Africa or such incidents taking place abroad. The church has just been under so much attack.
This is one of the 5 heartless robbers who entered and robbed the Emmanuel Community Church in Spring Road, Verulam in KwaZulu-Natal on Thursday. The robbers, who struck during the church's live-streamed service, held congregants at gunpoint and robbed them of their cell phones, money, valuables, and 2 of their vehicles. Unfortunately for the robbers, the pastor did not have any money in his wallet, which was then thrown back at him with big disappointment on the robber's face. Other church members were heavily traumatized. It's furthermore alleged that 2 sets of false teeth were also stolen during the robbery. A case of business robbery has since been opened.
Today, I want us to react to such an incident, unfortunately, where a pastor in America was attacked whilst they were still preaching. And this comes from the back of what happened to Bishop Emmanuel Mari. Bishop Emmanuel Mari is the bishop of the Assyrian Orthodox Church. Many people love him, many people hate him because of his beliefs, some of the takes he often has. But one thing we can all agree on, at least, is that he's definitely doing amazing work for the kingdom in this time and in this generation. Whilst giving a preaching or a rendition of the gospel in Australia, he was attacked, and in that attack he was injured, and as we speak now, apparently he has lost vision to his right eye, and he came out to publicly forgive the attacker. He asked the church not to condemn but to pray for the attacker. It's highly commendable. It's highly commendable to see such. But again, the church has just been under so much attack. Now, without wasting any time, let's get into this video.
And God had chose.
Remarkable video out of Pennsylvania, out of North Braddock, Pennsylvania, of a pastor who had a person come into his church and point a gun at him, only to have the gun not go off before, as you can see on the video there, they were able to subdue the man. And that pastor is joining us right now, and his name is Pastor Glenn Germany. Pastor, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. It's really an honor, and it's a blessing for me to be here. I mean, I'm just really grateful for the opportunity to be here with you.
Yeah, I mean, we're at.
I mean, we need to give glory to God for this, that the gun jammed. We just need to give glory to God for this, because at that point in time, he could have lost his life. He could have lost his life, but the gun jammed. That can only be God. That can only be attributed to God. And this is very disturbing, and it's happening on a frequent basis. There was, of course, the instance that happened at Joel Austin's church. I think the church is called Lakewood, where there was a shooter as well who wanted to come and shoot fellow believers and just cause a scene. And fortunately, they stopped before they could do anything like that. I've seen instances and videos, even here at home, where people have went inside the church while the pastor is still preaching, with guns pointed at the pastor, the congregation, robbed them, broad daylight while the message was being streamed live. So these people don't care anymore. There's no conscience anymore. There's no fear. So this has been happening on a frequent basis, and I thought maybe we need to talk about this. But most importantly, we need to pray over the church. Let's get back to the video, and we're going to just touch on a few things.
Really glad you're still here after that. I mean, what was going through your mind, Pastor, when you get up there, you're doing your sermon like I'm sure you do on many Sundays, and you notice this guy? Tell me what happened.
To be honest with you, it was just another, Sunday service. We was really just having a good time in service. The praise and worship was wonderful, excellent. And I seen this guy while we were in the midst of praise and worship. He came into church, then he left the church. And he came into church and he left. And I didn't think it was nothing strange, because I was so used to people would come in and they would hear the music and they would listen to the music and they would leave out. And so it didn't, take me by surprise, him coming in and out. But then all of a sudden, and also my brother had told me that he was expecting a guest to come in the building. And so I thought that was my brother's guest. And at one point I see him, he's sitting in the back before I come up and speak. And then he comes from the back and he moves all the way up to the front of the, congregation. And he was actually sitting on my left-hand side. And I thought he was going to keep going by me, because my brother, as you see in the video, he was at the piano. He was on my right-hand side, and I thought he was his friend, so I thought he was going to walk over to my brother. But when he stopped in the middle of the pulpit and he pulled the gun out, I didn't know it would just react.
Yeah, I can.
I can just imagine what happens in your mind when you see that. Literally your life like flashing before you. What do you do in that instance? What do you do in that instance? And shout out to the men of this church. That's why we need men in the church, man. Shout out to how they reacted quickly. Of course, the gun jammed. If he shot the pastor, things could have been fatal. But we also thank God that these guys were able to apprehend and stop this man from doing any kind of damage. We need such men. That's why even the issue of men not being in the church, this is strategic from the enemy. We need men in the church. We need families in the church, and we need women in the church. We need church as a people. But it's very disheartening when you see how the evil from this world has spilled in, even in the church, where people have no fear anymore. Of course, this guy could be influenced by something at this point in time, but the events around how everything is just done in itself is very puzzling. And we need to be aware. We need to be aware as a people. Does this therefore mean that we need more security? Does this mean that we need to watch who comes into church? How what does this say about how we do church going forward? It's very disheartening, but we glory also in the fact that God was able to preserve him and able to save him in this instance.
Imagine that was a harrowing experience, and you didn't know this person at all, right? As you're saying, like, this is somebody that has no connection to you at all, or your family, or anybody. So what do you have any idea why he wanted to do this?
I had a chance to speak with him, and also I'm at this point in the interview, I get to speak from hindsight, and I understand what has taken place prior to him coming to the church. There was an altercation at a house prior, and this is all presumption because they haven't finished the court case, and I don't want to say anyone's guilty or before they have a chance to go through what happened. But truly, he was dealing with a situation, and when he came to the church, that situation was still active in his mind. And so leaving one scene and coming down to the church and being, and then committing to what he committed to here, it was like he was someone. I had a chance to talk to him. I seen, he had mental illness, but at the same token, it was like, it was from some type of drug intake. And I'm no specialist, but you can tell these kids he wasn't there. It was like, it was him and his body, but it was not him there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's frightening. That's frightening. This guy had nothing to lose, it seems. He was a man possessed, it seems, in terms of how the pastor is just describing the whole incident. And this is why I always say that even though the church needs men and the church needs families, men, society, they need church, because we are dealing with people who are broken. We are dealing with people who have experienced so much trauma, and it's easy for us to judge them when we see them on drugs and when we see them giving themselves to this world. At the center of all of that, we need to realize as a church, and I'm speaking to the church, as a church, we need to realize at the center of their rebellion, at the center of them wanting to go against everything holy, pure, true, righteous, it's just a sense of brokenness, a void in them that only God can fill. And our desire, our continuous desire should be, Lord, show us, teach us, give us the zeal necessary to go and reach these people where they are and ultimately bring them to you, where they can be reconciled back to you, their maker. The Bible often speaks about how we have been reconciled with Christ. And because of us being reconciled with Christ, the expectation is we would go out there and reconcile others to Christ. So we are dealing with a broken world. We are dealing with a broken people. And how the pastor is describing this whole incident seems like this guy had nothing to lose. Probably things are not going well for him. He sees nothing but death and destruction. And of course, we can try to blame and say he's grown. Definitely what he was doing, he understood exactly what is it that he's doing. That is true. But also we must not negate or ignore spiritual elements and the traumas and the areas in which these people often find themselves in. And that's why the Bible often cautions us that we don't fight flesh and blood in this war that we are fighting. We are fighting spiritual principles in mid-air. We are fighting spiritual forces. And even when it comes to such instances, yes, we can have a lens and try to talk about them and describe them through an earthly perspective. But we should also be aware that these are forces in mid-air. As the pastor is saying, this man looked as though he was possessed, he was overtaken by something. And unfortunately, these are things that our society doesn't want to be honest about, to say they also need the church. But as a church also, there should be encouragement to say we need to get these guys back to God, back to the church, because death is imminent for them. Destruction is imminent for them if they continue in the path in which they are continuing. So shout out to this pastor, man, and also the fact that he went to speak to this guy after this. Shout out to him, man.
Speaking of this, you're obviously a pastor here. What have been your thoughts today? And as you know, you've been processing this, I'm sure a lot of shock, but what have been your thoughts from kind of a spiritual perspective on this whole thing?
Well, on the spiritual perspective, to be honest with you, I'm totally grateful because I understand the protection of God and the protection of God being with me, and this is nothing less than a miracle. Like I say, he left one scene and he came to another scene, and I really didn't fully answer your last. When I asked him why did he do it, he said that there were spirits inside of his mind telling him to go shoot the pastor. And so, no.
Guys, this is not flesh and blood. This is not flesh and blood. People don't realize that for us Christians, the war really is in the spiritual realm, and this is where we fight. This is what I'm saying. This guy definitely was possessed by something more than just himself and his emotions. And unfortunately, this is the reality. Some of the people in our families, that we constantly fight with. And I wonder, why are these people giving themselves to sin, drugs, alcohol? Why are these young ladies giving themselves to men? It's because we are not fighting a fight based on flesh and blood. They are spiritual forces that want to possess God's people so that ultimately they can walk in complete destruction and not be the image bearers that God created them to be. And when we go and try to reach souls, when we go and try to call these people in the kingdom of God, that should always be our perspective. Let's not just look at them from a fleshly perspective, but may we see in the spirit and also see who they really are in the spirit, who God really designed them to be in the spirit. Because if this pastor only looked at this whole incident in accordance to the flesh, there's no way he was going to be interested to want to understand why did this man do what he did. He almost died, but he still saw it fit to have a conversation with this guy.
That and knowing that he, one thing that he said to me is basically, this was the language that he used that I never heard before. He said, "Today you ducked a taco." And I'm like, what did that mean? I ducked a taco, but I understood. He was saying, I was shooting at your head and I missed you. And he was letting me know that, he was told to come in here and shoot the pastor, and then I asked him, well, why did he? I don't know why I did it. And he apologized. I know It was the grace of God, and I know it was a miracle because the gun jammed, and you could see when the officer came in and he emptied the clip of the gun and he removed the bullet was still in the chamber, and the bullet had markings of it getting jammed in there. And you can't hear no shooting, but if you listen to the video closely, you can actually hear him clicking the gun.
Wow, that is absolutely remarkable. I also want to commend the gentleman. Who is the gentleman that came in once, because these things happen quick, and you're doing your thing, you're preaching. It's kind of hard to process something like this sometimes, for a few seconds there, critical seconds. And the one gentleman sort of, once the misfire happens, he leaps into action. Who was that?
Well, if you don't mind.
Every pastor needs a guy like this. Every pastor needs a guy like this. Every pastor needs a guy like this.
It's right here. I can let him say hello if you.
Sure, hey, bring him in.
Here he is, right here.
How's everybody doing?
Hello, sir. I'm doing great. God bless you. What were you thinking when you saw that happen? You jumped right into action.
Hey, that's my pastor. I got to handle my business. I don't want nothing to happen to him.
Yes, sir. Well, God bless you for taking quick action. That was a very, very brave thing you did because the gun jammed, but you don't know if it's going to go off the next time. So God bless you, sir, for your quick thinking.
Well, thank you.
Do you guys have any plans to maybe minister to this gentleman? And I'm sure the tape speaks for itself. I'm assuming he's going to get some sort of punishment here. So do you have any plans to potentially minister to this gentleman? Like you said, it sounded like he had a troubled spirit.
Yes. Well, to be honest with you, when I held him down for 20 minutes. I had time to actually speak with the minister. But while I was holding him, there was members who were praying for him. And at the same token, I was having a chance to talk with him. But then later when he was in the car.
As much as this is a tragic incident and event, shout out to how the church reacted, man. A lot of us wouldn't react the way they did. They prayed for him and they had a chat with him, showed him compassion, love, and kindness in the midst of all the madness. So also I think we should give credit to how the church dealt with this situation. You can tell this is a very matured church. Spiritually, you can tell it's a healthy place. Just looking at how they just dealt with this incident, you can tell that this is a loving, kind, God-fearing, God-honoring church. So shout out to the church also for still seeing the need and the importance of praying for him and having a conversation with him and hopefully trying to use this as a gospel moment where he can also have a relationship with Christ and ultimately come into relationship with Jesus. So again, kudos to the church.
I had a chance to go up to the police car for 10 minutes. The officer allowed me to talk with him. And I talked it to him and I let him know, my name is Glenn Germany. I want you to remember that. And I want you to know that I forgive you. And I want to let him know I love him. I told him that, please, whatever it is that he needs while he's in there, get in touch with me. You know, we'll help him as much as we can possibly help him. And that's just, you know, doing what we're supposed to do, loving people.
It's easy to say, you know, love your enemies, forgive your enemies. But from what I'm learning from this pastor and what happened to Bishop Emmanuel Mari, forgiving people that almost ended your life, it's the most matured, Christ-like thing you'll ever see. You know, the pastor saying, I went to him, had a conversation with him, and I forgave him. Bishop Mari also said he forgave his attacker even though he lost his eye. So that's high-level maturity right there. And knowing that this guy was arrested after this incident, there's another video in which specifically speaks on this guy. I think he was detained. Just want us to have a look at it.
A man who police say tried to shoot a local pastor in the middle of a Sunday sermon is now charged with murdering his cousin hours earlier. Jennifer Barrasso is live at the Allegheny County Jail where the suspect is being held tonight, and she has more on the investigation. Jen.
That's wild. So this guy was just on a killing spree on the day. So this can only be God, because clearly he shot his cousin and now he was going to shoot the pastor. That's wild.
That's right, Ken. So 26-year-old Bernard Polite is charged with shooting and killing his 56-year-old cousin, Derek Polite, in their home in North Braddock on Sunday. What police still don't know right now is why. The man caught on video pointing a gun at a pastor preaching at church Sunday is now charged with killing his cousin at their home on Stokes Avenue in North Braddock earlier that day.
We were able to bring this case to a quick resolution thanks to the cooperation from the community and assistance from the Pennsylvania State Police and the criminalist at our medical examiner's crime lab.
Allegheny County Police Superintendent Chris Kearns says Bernard Polite shot Derek Polite once in the head. Police say he walked a few blocks away to Jesus Dwelling Place Church a few hours later, pointing the gun at Pastor Glenn Germany. The gun jammed, though.
So these incidents happened closer to each other. So he used this gun before, and he was going to use it again. And of course, when he used it before, it worked. He murdered his cousin, and he was going to do the same with the pastor. That's what I'm saying. It's only God, man, because it worked prior this, and now it didn't work. That's wild.
Giving a church deacon time to tackle Polite and pull the gun away, holding him still until state police arrived. According to the criminal complaint, Derek Polite's family saw reports of Bernard's arrest and went to their home, where they found Derek dead in a pool of blood.
We saw no evidence that there was any type of altercation. It appears the victim was shot as he was walking up the steps.
Witnesses told police they'd seen Bernard Polite pacing outside his home the morning of May 5th.
One witness put him on the porch of the residence just before 10 a.m. We had another witness who heard what they believed to be a gunshot at 10 a.m.
Police say evidence at the home shows the gun used to kill Derek Polite is the same gun that was pointed at Pastor Germany.
Did he confess to killing his cousin?
We are not allowed to talk about any statements made by defendants.
Superintendent Kearns says he believes Bernard Polite owned the gun that was used. He says they didn't find any notes at the crime scene. And we went back to the home tonight in North Braddock. There was a large crowd outside of the home. Derek Polite's daughter told me she didn't have any comment tonight. Now, as for Bernard Polite, there's no criminal record here in Allegheny County besides the two recent charges. Reporting live outside of the Allegheny County Jail, Jennifer Barrasso, KDK TV News.
This is what makes this whole thing wild. This guy didn't have any past criminal record before this. So this is not typically what he would do. It's not like he's going out there killing people or robbing people. He had no criminal record. So clearly this is not something he does on a regular basis. And people still think, you know, there are no spiritual forces. There's no darkness and evil in this world. I think in light of this, I would say as the church, we need to pray. We need to pray. Again, so much attacks happening in the church. We thank God for saving the pastor's life and ensuring that, you know, he's still here, able to preach the gospel, show compassion and love. And I also pray for the gentleman as well. May he come into a relationship with Christ. Of course, he's going to be persecuted, but, you know, he's still a soul at the end of the day. May he ultimately know Christ. And let's just pray for our church. Again, this is not a war that we fight in accordance to the flesh. There are principalities, spiritual forces against the church, against the message of Christ, against Christ being exalted. And this is a clear sign and indication that our society, our men, our women need Jesus in their lives. This fallen world needs God to work, move, and redeem it to the glory of Christ. May God keep you. May God bless you. Grace and peace.